All right, so this is kind of a checkpoint video. At this point, there are probably a lot more little variations of exercises and games, and also more playful, ways of communicating some of these exercises and games to enhance your ability to understand and execute some of the fundamentals. Like for example, some of the bow exercises we did, the basic bow exercises, the strengthening exercises, body weight exercises, as well as like the basic, 2-octave scales, talking about how different bow strokes affect other bow strokes. These could be discussed from several different angles, right? And that is the job, I think, of a good teacher, to find the right angle. On the other hand, personally, this is getting into my personal experience, I experienced the greatest improvement when I fully committed to the idea that no matter how this teacher that I trusted expressed himself, that I would literally do everything and anything to, first of all, understand him completely. Okay, like all prejudices aside, I would simply absorb everything and give it and actually try it fully. And I think this is very important at this point, because these fundamentals, right, that I've talked about, and if you're like a young kid, very young, and you don't know what it's like to be as self-learner, and you don't have that drive, but you are in high school now, and you have that drive, you have the desire. Then what I would highly recommend is think about this. If you don't, for example, even if you're studying with some teacher, if you try his method, right? Unless you truly try it, that is, you do it 100%, you understand it, and you actually change, to become what he or she is teaching you, you have no way of really judging how effective that might be. Now, some things are very more obvious, like for example, like, okay, maybe they say something ridiculous like, hey, why don't you singe your fingertips in the fire before practicing, or something just utterly weird, okay? But if you are working with somebody that you believe does have a firm understanding of what it takes to go to the next level, then what helped me the most, when I improved the most, and when I actually started to improve the fastest and most completely, is when I decided to commit fully and figure out how to first understand everything that the teacher was saying, like really understand it, and execute and come and get to that level that that he or she was talking about. Like for example, if they're talking about like holding the bow like this, until I make that almost into a habit. Okay, and focusing completely on that enabled me to kind of almost become what was being taught, and then I could actually, my opinion of that technique, skill, or fundamental understanding, whatever, I could actually make a real judgment and decide for myself. Before I made this commitment, I used to go to, when I was younger, I studied with so many great violinists, and I had a period where I was kind of hopping around too much, especially mentally. Mentally, I was like, it's not even a matter of how many teachers you see. I mean, that does affect the mind. But the mental problem was that, I thought that, I was at a level where I could, if I practiced, I could play anything, which is kind of true, because by that point, by the time I was a teenager, I already learned like, Corpi no Mi Sento, and I was looking at, the hardest showpieces out there, and I found out if I just practiced, just more time, more effort, I could play them, and that was very detrimental, because then I would, I was kind of fool myself a little bit, and even though I wanted to kind of listen to other violinists, I didn't truly buckle down and absorb what they were saying about real fundamentals and make it my own before making any judgments, right? I was just gonna be like, oh, that kind of works, try a little bit. Oh, and then I go to this other teacher, oh, that's kind of cool too, I'll try that a little bit. But at that time, there were some teachers who were pointing out my core fundamental issues, and those I should have absorbed and practiced, made my own, before I even had the right, or the ability actually, to make a judgment whether that technique works for me or not. And so this commitment is very important at this point. Because I've reviewed some of the ideas that I've reviewed so far, and although these videos are public, the core concepts of these ideas, they're not like really sugar coated. I haven't tried to express them in like the most friendly, like kid-like terms, but basically, if you do most of these or a number of these consistently, and you figure out which ones you want to do and you stick to it, they are actually going to build a very solid foundation, which will, that's the purpose of these fundamentals, is to provide you with a solid base on the good days and the bad, and so that you can have a long and successful relationship with the violin. And on the good days, you will be that much better, and on the bad days, you will still have more of these fundamentals than you could have had before. So if you do all of these, definitely all those core concepts, that core technical principles, that you see somebody like Benny just execute, you're going to have those core principles. Now, if you're committed, the hardest thing for me is to stay committed, consistently driven, to get to a specific goal. That's why I listen to like podcasts sometimes, and YouTube channels of people, like especially entrepreneurs, like successful ones who've gone through very difficult times, and how they set goals for themselves and how they achieve those goals. Because entrepreneurs are kind of like us, they have a goal, they have drive, and it's all about execution, and it's a lot of self-learning and commitment and all that kind of stuff, persistence, right? So I would say, here's some ideas. Well, before I get into ideas, I would say that once you're done with your tour, try to subscribe to Tom Bellew. I'll email his link to you, because he is obsessed with optimizing his mind and body. Now, you don't have to follow everything he says or what his guest interviewees say. However, the attitude that those people bring, these are some of the most successful people in the whole world, like measurable success, as well as, a lot of them have come from, like, our self-made successful people. Some people more talent than others, some people less, but man, some of them are incredible people with incredible stories. Some of them, I think, might interest you in terms of brain plasticity, how to set goals, how to educate your brain better than the old traditional way of just sticking to things, persistence, just do it, is still the key. However, understanding more about how your mind, brain, emotions, hormones, all these things work can, in certain cases, I believe, help you be more smart about setting your goals, executing them, getting back up, understanding yourself, all that kind of stuff. So there are some people who talk about that on his show, and I believe it'll be very helpful. Now let's get to the last thing I want to talk about is how I have been trying to set my goals more clearly. So my problem, and I think you have the same problem too, I've noticed, is that you have the desire, you kind of know what you want to do, but you don't stick to it until it's at that level where you are kind of allowed to slack off. Okay? It's like walking, right? Like, you keep trying, and then all of a sudden one day you're so good at walking, you don't have to focus on walking as much, If you want to be a perfect walker, yeah, you probably still focus on it once in a while, but you need to get to a certain level before you are even allowed to slack off a little bit. And if you want to be great, you probably will never really slack off. But in any case, we should at least get to that minimal level. And I've noticed with our lessons when we're Skyping more regularly that after about a month and a half of regular, consistent practice of the same thing, you are starting to show real results. Okay, so to put it safely, I think about 6 to 8 weeks is a good time frame for, let's say, you or me, somebody like you or me, to actually kind of embody some of these concepts and be able to have a valid opinion, a judgment, a review about whether these concepts and these habits or whatever are going to work for us. And so the key is, how can we stick to that? What I've been trying to do is I've acquired really cheap notebooks. Like I basically bought like legal pads, like these. And I got this idea from Grant Cardone. He's an entrepreneur, sometimes vulgar and stuff, but he has some good traits, I think. But in any case, what I do is I have a legal pad for different aspects of my life. Okay. For now, let's just take violin. For violin, I will set the most urgent problems I need to solve right now. Okay. For me, I've noticed that what most concerns me is not my right hand that I've been talking about in the videos for you, but for me, my vibrato is one of the first techniques to fail me when I don't practice. I've noticed other people who practice it more regularly, it doesn't fail them. So it's a matter of me failing to practice that consistently. So I just practice a 2-octave G major scale, C major scale, D major scale, and that and focus on the rolling of the fingertip. And I look in the mirror sometimes. I'm trying to go for a nice hand vibrato, rocking hand vibrato, and all that kind of stuff. But that's one of my main, and I have a few others. But basically, I write down what are my key, most urgent issues. And then what I do is I write those goals down every morning and every evening. It takes like 30 seconds, okay? But I write those down every morning, every evening. And this helps me so much because I'm just not disciplined enough that every day, I know I need to fix this. I know this will take time. I know that all these things I just taught you, I know that, right? Like I know that I need to stick to it to really make it into, like my own before I can even, make a judgment about, hey, that method really worked, I know this, but I can't stick to it normally because at the moment I open up the violin case, I have so many distractions, like not just outside of violin, but suddenly I just want to play something pretty, you know, and I'm just playing something like that, or like, let's say I want to play something kind of fast today, and I kind of want to show off to myself, you know, and I start playing something fast, and then, you know, I've played Tchaikovsky, and I just start playing that, or I start playing Sibelius, or I'm like, oh, you know, I should put in fingerings for, you know, I upload all my fingerings for songs. I should work on that now, and blah, 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 blah. If I practice like this, I've noticed that I just don't get my goals done. And this is the kind of attitude of a goalless entrepreneur or musician, right? In my opinion, like, you'll get nothing done. You need a teacher if you're like this to kind of, you know, kick your butt. You need, I need a gig, you know, or something, you know, maybe I'll get paid, or maybe a great musician has asked me to play with them, and I just suddenly start to feel the pressure, or, you know, some goal like that. But as a learner, those external stimulations should not be the only thing, right? And when we can't find that obsessive drive over something because we have so many things going on and the drive sometimes dies down or whatever, being able to continually set the goals, remind yourself of the goal to the point where you really, really, really have internalized it is so critical. So this has been helping me a lot. I'll be honest with you, I have failed to write down consistently my goals. Like, what is it? Like, I've tried this for, you know, a couple months now, but I have tried, like, failed sometimes for like a whole week. Felt miserable, but I've tried to pick myself back up, and when I do write these goals down, I feel and I execute so much better. So I highly recommend doing something like this. Take a notebook, morning and evening, write those most urgent goals you need to solve down, as well as, if you want, also write down an end date. Okay, so I said like 6 or 8 weeks. Okay, until that date, you're going to do this. This is your goal every day, and you write it down, and this act in itself does wonders for our brain, keeps us goal-oriented, and when we fail, it gives us something concrete to come back to. Okay, instead of just feeling, oh my God, I just didn't practice, and putting it down, you know, feeling frustrated, and then suddenly you have to do something else, and this mess, you know, overtaking me. I mean, like, okay, I'm going to go back to writing on a legal notepad, write it down. My mind is a little clearer. Okay, I do it again the second day. My mind is even clearer. Third, fourth, the more days I do in a row, it gets clearer and clearer. If I fail, I go right back, and then I go right back to the method. And I write it down, and then I'm clear about my practice again, and then so on. I look forward to your long email that you said you were going to send yesterday. And let's do this. I'll work on my most urgent problems. One of them being the rocking, rolling vibrato, making that really second nature to me. And I truly look forward to seeing your list. Okay, bye.